Well, here we are live, and we just lost Ron. So I'm here alone, and I don't know where he went. So we're supposed to be talking about what's going on this week. Uh, I'm going to text him, see what's going on. Oh, so we're going to look back at last week. We're going to look ahead to this week, and we're going to hope Ron comes back. You know, that's what you get when you move. Are those moving pains you had?
Just clicked on the wrong button as I was moving through, but here I am. Hope you carried the show.
I carried the show. They were begging me to just shut up. So anyway, this is our process discussion. We haven't spoken or prepared for anything, and we're just going to talk free flow about what happened last week, what happened next week, and Ron always has 3 or 4 things to talk about. So with that in mind, I think you had a decent week that ended on a sour note. Is that correct?
That is correct. Decent week. Could have been better if the Jets would have participated in last night's game. Nothing really to write home about because only Green Bay and the Jets were bigger plays for me. So even though I had a 5-2 week, which should have been 5-3, but for unforeseen circumstances, I got lucky and thought I placed a bet on one game and didn't, which never happens. It's usually the game I place a bet on. I think I placed a bet on and I didn't usually win, but this time it lost. So I got a break with a 5-2 record. But again, only two plays of consequence, and I split those. But I can say this as I was thinking about it over the last 24 hours. You and I have been using different approaches to wagering the last 2 weeks, maybe even longer. And they both can be successful if done carefully. And I think it points to strategies that you've developed and metrics that I've tried to keep intact without deviating from what I do. And it gives listeners of our show choices on how to attack the slate, depending on their comfort level. So maybe you could go back in and rehash your week a little bit and tell how that evolved into a winning week.
Well, it was a week of where minor concern is developing at this point because the model did not do well last week. You know what? I left last week's paperwork. I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 3-5 or 3-6 if I had played them all straight. And thankfully, I refused to play 2 games, specifically Buffalo and somebody else straight, even though the model said to play them straight. And they both won by teaser only. So I turned 2 losers into winners. So that was a job well done. But the week ended on a big sour note with Buffalo. Well, the Buffalo did cover, but could have used them to outright win and needed Dallas an outright win. Dallas was one that I only played on teaser. I did not want the 3. So that one, Buffalo covered, and the Jets, what a debacle that was. So sour note there. But little concerned with the system. But I don't know whether you're aware of this. This is a very unique year. This is like a once in 20 years type of season at this point. The unders are covering at like 61 or 62%. And since week 2, I think it's like over 65% or something. That's strange. Underdogs are having one of their worst seasons in 20 years. 46.8% cover rate. We do a lot of dogs with what we do. Dogs of more than a field goal are covering at a 44% rate. So this is just an anomaly type year. I don't know how you feel about it as far as adjustments. I think it's important to be receptive to pivoting. And under these circumstances, do you expect the regression to happen this year? Or do you think this continues throughout the season?
I don't know if we have enough sample size for this. I will say that my underdog plays have been hitting around 65% this year. And because I have 3 underdogs to every favorite, I'm comfortable in the underdogs that I'm choosing. But I understand that this is a league. I think the problem, Chris, is that we now have 12 quarterbacks out of 32 that are down with injuries. And that creates variance. It creates poor play. And even there's probably another 12 quarterbacks, maybe not 12, but let's say 8 quarterbacks, such as Zach Wilson last week or last night, where you'd say, okay, they're not injured, but they're not good. So we have a lot of quarterbacks that are playing in the NFL that aren't really that good. We have a lot of quarterbacks that are playing out of necessity. We have a record tying 9 rookie quarterbacks that have played, and we might have a 10th, a record-breaking quarterback this year. So I think that creates some disparity. We talked last week and we said there's no super team, but there's still a disparity between the top 10 teams and the 11th team and the top 10 teams and the bottom 10 teams. And I think the bottom 10 teams are not carrying their weight.
Well, another thing that I wanted to pass along is the scoring margin. I believe it is really unusual, also. So it's diluted. Even though and here's the bizarre thing: is we have lower scoring games. So you would think that teasers and dogs would be covering at a higher rate. And that is not the case. They're covering at a lower rate. So don't you find that odd?
It's a little bit odd, but I think it would be different if all teams were at full strength. But we're seeing a lot of offenses struggle this year. And when you can't take the Green Bay Ram game, for example. Green Bay was not a juggernaut offensively. All they needed to do, in my opinion, was to keep Jordan Love out of harm's way. That's the reason I like Green Bay, is because the Rams weren't going to do anything against Green Bay's defense without a running game and virtually without a quarterback. The only way Green Bay could mess it up would be have Jordan Love throw into coverage like he's been doing week after week after week. But they took the air out of the ball for the most part. They gave him safer throws. And even though we had a lower scoring game, your point is well taken. Green Bay still covered any teases that needed. If you had the Rams as an underdog in a tease, you weren't going to get home because the Rams weren't going to do enough offensively.
Somebody questioned me why I was on the Rams last week. And I said, well, I didn't think Green Bay would score more than 20. And we took plus 13 on a 10-teamer or on a series of 10-teamers, 10-pointers with 3 teams. We're supposed to win that game when you hold the other team to 20 points. And when you don't, that's quite frustrating.
Yeah, they were never in the game. I see breaking news. Carson Wentz is now with the Rams. We were wondering when Carson Wentz would be signed by an NFL team. Not a bad move.
What else are you going to do? Who's out there? Unless you're Cam Newton and you want $5 million, what are your choices?
Yeah, it's low risk. I think that's good. Carson Wentz, for all his flaws, and part of it is team building chemistry flaws, there's probably 10 quarterbacks that are playing right now that are worse than him. So that's a problem. And New York Giants are going to suit up a quarterback that didn't fare well in the college game.
They're in some deep trouble, but they're positioned nicely for a high draft pick with that quarterback. Was that DeVito?
That's DeVito.
Yeah.
And I wrote about that this week, the article, which will come out today. I think when we're handicapping, we're discussing this live right now, no prep. You're looking at the New York Giants. And if I'm the New York Giants coaching staff, who's already had a lot of meltdowns this year, I'm more interested in seeing what the rookies bring to the table. I'm benching some veterans, and I'm moving forward to see this roster looks to be completely different in 2024. Has to be, if they're going to be competing against Dallas and Philadelphia twice for each team each year. They have to do some things differently. And I would be evaluating the roster starting tomorrow.
I concur 100%. So I think we talked about it on this show. I know offhand that one of the things we talked about was just because you think a team is left for dead, like Washington, who traded away 3 players, Minnesota traded somebody key and had injuries. Actually, Minnesota did. Minnesota traded their defensive guy. And I forget who else.
New York Giants traded their defensive lineman, but they ran into a buzzsaw in the fact that the Raiders got a pivot because all the negative situations that were supposed to take place didn't, because the locker room mentality changed with all the coaching firings and so on. And it created a very good situation for the Raiders. So that one was not in there.
Oh, Tennessee was a third team that I refused to bet straight and only did a teaser and turned it around. So we did get in with Minnesota, a team left for dead. Washington, team left for dead. I think the Bears are kind of, in that category. They ended up covering, although they shouldn't have.
They shouldn't have. Let me speak to those two. Minnesota was a play only and I don't know if it was true for you, but for me, the only reason I made Minnesota play is because there was a tremendous overreaction in the point spread. They were acting like it was a 10-point difference. And I didn't see that at all, not against a passive Atlanta team. And the other one you mentioned, Washington, I think you're going to see regression with Washington, but New England was a perfect team to play against because New England's using a 1970s offense, and they cannot get to the opposing quarterback without Matthew Judon.
Like, as you mentioned, the Giants just ran into a buzzsaw. I'm disappointed I didn't think about the coaching angle on the Raiders. I didn't have a play on the game. And I'm not sure I ever would have, but I am in the penalty box for failing to remember that. So
I don't pivot often, but I pivoted in that game with a small play. But I pivoted with fading the New York Giants in that game.
I thought I would have had a better week than I did, and I suppose I did when I was supposed to get absolutely buried, and I think it ended up being a washout. So I can't be too disappointed. Anything else looking back at last week?
No, it was a card that at first I was trying to make something out of nothing with only Green Bay and the Jets as plays that stood out for me. Cincinnati did start standing out for me, even though there was a reevaluation of their power rating and everybody caught up to my numbers. I have to say this was a play against Buffalo. Buffalo's defense wasn't going to suddenly get better against Joe Burrow. If you really look at, and I don't know where you had Buffalo's defense before the Cincinnati game, but I did not rate Buffalo's defense highly. And it clearly became a situation where in a virtual pick'em spread, 1.5 mostly, all I had to do is have Cincinnati win the game. I think there's something wrong with Buffalo right now.
Yeah, I've been stuck on a handful of games. It seems like at least once a week I'm on a game I really don't want. And but it's different than the hold your nose play.
Yeah.
There's the hold your nose plays that you've got hope on, and then there's the ones that you're like, oh, God, this is no good. And Buffalo was one of those games. I had no confidence that they were going to win that game.
Yeah.
That's why I had to use all teasers. And
Hector has a good question. He said, "How long do you stay on the Raiders pivot and so on?" That's really interesting. I think you still get a new interim coach bump for a second week. A lot of it depends on circumstances, and they face a Jet team this week. Will be off a short week and has zero confidence whatsoever. So I think you still get a bump, but as soon as you start to see something happen offensively, or they get placed back down to earth, then that bump will probably go away. You don't know. Steve Wilkes in Carolina, I think last year, they stayed competitive throughout the year. Sometimes it's the culture of the locker room, and the Raiders reportedly just blasted Josh McDaniels in a team meeting before he was fired. And so I think there are some things you just have to throw out when you're evaluating the Raiders moving forward. So I'm going to hold them in a little bit higher regard than I would have.
Yeah, I generally think it's in football. I think it doesn't usually last more than a week. I think I would be more inclined to think that's not going to work. I feel a little uneasy in this situation because there seems to be so much genuine euphoria about the new coach, and he seems to be a little Jim Campbell or Dan Campbell-esque with his ability to connect with the players and have motivating attributes about him. So that's where I stand on that. I want to see what the news out of the team is throughout the week.
That's the one line I got wrong this week. My initial reaction is that the Jets shouldn't be favored in the game.
I for the life of me, how the hell? Well, okay, the twos are gone, but there was a two up. There were twos up there a few moments ago, but it's still 1.5. I don't understand after everybody watched the Jets last night how that can be sitting there.
So it's this portion of the show, Chris, where we pivot. I think I may have to make one of the live bets right now.
On the Jets?
Yeah, because the line's going to change.
It has to.
I mean, I'll handicap the game in more detail later, but you must bear with me for a second here. This is live radio, live television, live YouTube.
Oh.
Any other lines kind of perplexed you this coming week?
Well, I see this Cincinnati line sliding back up. I thought that was a pump fake with Chase. I think he'll end up playing, and there was a little market overreaction. I think that also I believe that they think the Bengals can steamroll. I think a lot of people think the Bengals can steamroll, and that Houston's in an entirely different category, and will just get left in the dust. What do you think? Do you think Houston can compete?
Yeah, I think we're getting into different territory now. Cincinnati was a dog against San Francisco. Cincinnati was a very short favorite against Buffalo. And now we're talking about Cincinnati, a full touchdown against Houston. At this point, past history with Cincinnati as a home favorite prior to December, and the fact that People haven't figured out Houston that well. Houston's going to take away the run game from most teams. Houston seems to be able to pass the ball even without a running game. I think we're in no play territory for me in this game. I've had Cincinnati 2 weeks in a row. I had them very strongly against San Francisco. I don't see it this week. This is most likely a stay on the sideline game.
Okay, sorry, I had to grab a line that was related to something I was holding. I don't know. I think that they can, they can compete. I mean, it's a possible letdown spot for the Bengals a little bit. They're not going to have too many letdown opportunities.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a letdown for two reasons. Number one, they have to respect Houston's playing well. And number two, technically they're tied for last in the conference, in the division, because everybody's 5-3,
That's
I believe.
true.
So you can't lose any game in that. I mean, that's just a brutal division with the way everybody's playing. And speaking of that, I have a new number one power rated team in the NFL, one that hadn't shown up all year. I'm curious to see where you have the Baltimore Ravens, which are my number one power rated team right now.
Oh, they've been number one for 2 weeks.
I'm behind?
Yep.
Oh, my goodness. Now I have to be in the penalty box.
Yeah. Well, that's another comment. Usually I have a really good jump over the market on teams throughout the season, and the scheduling has absolutely screwed me because I've been all over Baltimore with a bad rash, in cases, and then they're facing other teams that are also doing well, but I wasn't able to have matchups that would take advantage of improving teams. And there's a couple of other teams too, as well that, either the spreads become out to, the moon, or they're facing another play on team. It's just a killer when you have two play on teams, or play against teams facing each other. Because you really count on those throughout the season. And I don't ever remember going this deep in a season where I don't get a team I can follow up or down each and every week for 4 or 5 weeks in a row.
Yeah. I feel good about that part of my handicapping as far as how it played in the injuries helped. Knowing that San Francisco had terrible rest differential plus injuries, and rushing Brock Purdy back from concussion-like syndromes was an NFL problem, not just a San Francisco problem. So, that was an advantage. Jacksonville, I was able to pivot and ride them from London on out, and Cincinnati. Obviously, there are some teams I'm still on the fence with. I still don't know who Cleveland is, just because they look good defensively against a bunch of bottom tier quarterbacks. I think Cleveland has a potential to be a top 5 to 10 team. They also have a potential to be the 20th best team. So I'm making no bones about the fact that I don't know Cleveland very well.
You know what? I avoided trouble with Cleveland because they were upwardly mobile, and for whatever reason, I wasn't able to take advantage of it. Although I won with them the week before, but now I'm seeing signs that there might be a problem with Cleveland. So I think that their offense is something you can't ignore.
Yeah. One more observation from last week. This is a general observation, and that's once we get tape on quarterbacks, we start to see regression. The Chicago quarterback, Bagent, I mean, he looks like a guy who came from a small college. We all got excited, not we, but people got excited about his week 1 performance in a pinch. He's come way back to earth. And then Will Levis. We've got 2 games of tape on Will Levis. He didn't excite versus Pittsburgh. He didn't play poorly. I still think he's overachieving according to my expectations as a rookie. But the more tape we get on him, the more good defensive teams are going to understand his tendencies and take them away from him.
I'm going to have to correct myself. I'm looking at my last 5 weeks, and Cleveland actually is 6th. So I don't know why I was thinking that they had been slumping, even though they've been doing okay. So it'll be interesting to see how they fare this week for sure, though.
Absolutely. We get into the meat of the schedule with them now.
So Thursday, we've got. I've got to say, I'm really excited for the primetime games this week. They're all nail biters.
Yeah, yeah. We got spoiled last week with one good game or great game in each time period. I don't know what the college slate is on Thursday, but this is an unbelievable chance for you, Cris, to take your wife out for an extra anniversary dinner.
Yeah. I noticed it looks like Fields is playing. We knew that. I saw, we got a bunch of 4s up there now. You don't seem like the type of person that's going to lay 4 with Chicago, Ron. I could be wrong.
I'm going to make every effort to pretend this game doesn't exist.
What are you going to need to get Chicago on your ticket? Or Carolina?
Walter Payton.
Carolina 4.5. You on them?
No. Bad teams find ways to screw you up, even when you have the right side. And Carolina is a team that doesn't have a lot of talent around their roster. Frank Wright, I don't know what you think of him, but I'm not sure why he was hired in the first place. Maybe a calming influence for a rookie quarterback. He had that kind of quarterback guru mentality. And Bryce Young is having a typical quarterback rookie year. I have nothing bad at all to say about Bryce Young. I think he has potential in the league. But this is a rookie year, and Peyton Manning, Troy Aikman, better quarterbacks than him have struggled as rookies with that kind of roster.
So you've got a matchup where the teams had a lot of turnovers the previous game. When you look at that variance, do you think that they'll take care of the ball better, be extra careful? Is there any strategy change for you?
Wow, that's a fantastic question. I really like that. When it's an anomaly, when a team has an unusual -4 turnovers or something like that,
That was -5.
Yeah. And they're more, and they're more a veteran team, then I definitely think that's a good angle. I like that comment a lot. With these teams, I'm not so sure that they would replicate or turn things around in terms of the turnover ratio. Will they teach better ball security? Will they do like what Green Bay did with Jordan Love and say, hey, let's not make the risky throw. Please, Jordan, don't try to win the game for us. Just don't lose the game for us. So it's possible we could see fewer turnovers.
What is
wow. Brian Burns is out. He's their best
they need
player.
Him?
He's their best player.
Oh. So I guess they need him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's the one who puts pressure on opposing quarterbacks. So if Fields gets out of the pocket and he has that escapability, that adds that dimension that he absolutely needs to his game. It's just another reason to stay away.
Germany game again.
Yeah. Yeah, 2 teams that deserve to go to Germany and maybe on a one-way ticket.
Oh. Well, I don't know. I'm boy, they didn't expect these records when they had these teams coming across 2-6 and 3-5. I don't know. It just seems like Indianapolis is the better team to me.
Well, I think what they're going to try to do is establish the run. But with Taylor and Moss, if they can take the air out of the ball and move the chains consistently, I think Indy's probably going to be the right side in this game, because nothing excites people about New England's offense. They faced a Washington defense that should have been vulnerable last week and didn't do much of anything. And now they're facing an Indianapolis defense that's not really all that good either. And who knows whether you could trust New England to do anything.
Well, I have the New England offense, the second worst in the league.
Makes sense.
I have the New England defense, the sixth worst in the league. Yeah. So obviously, there's not going to be a way that I see New England as the better team in this situation.
Where do you have Indianapolis's defense?
12th from the bottom.
Yeah, I see pretty close to the same defense under my metrics for both of them, which would be bottom tier, bottom half of the league, in the 18, I'd say in the 20 to 25 range for both teams. And I agree with you that Indianapolis offense is better than New England's offense.
Well, yeah, I have Indian. Oh boy, I'm not going to share this little tidbit, but I have Indianapolis in the top 15 of offenses. So that's quite a difference there.
Yeah, I would have them. I mean, I'm doing this on the fly, but I would have them around the 10, 11, 12 range in offense.
Oh, so same range. Well, yeah. Okay.
How do you guys power rating change with all the quarterbacks? This is a topic we used on Friday's Inside Blitz with Ted last week, where we did that. If you go to Las Vegas Chris's YouTube channel, you can rehash that particular conversation. But for example, this week, the New York Giants, you can't set a power rating low enough on the New York Giants with DeVito at quarterback. I think it's Danny DeVito that's quarterbacking this team this week. So he's a little short, but we'll see. New York Giants will probably carry a power rating that is in expansion team category for this week because of the quarterback play.
Somebody was talking about the Cleveland defense trending up, and where was it? I missed it. The Colts, I mean. And I have, let's see if that's true. No, I have the Indianapolis defense trending 2 points lower over the previous 5 weeks. They're trending slightly up offensively. Neither team overall is faring well for the season or for the last 5 weeks. They're both in the 20s.
And we're looking right now at a 1 point spread. Is that correct? Yeah,
that's correct.
Trending a little up, maybe.
No, it was higher this morning. There's New England money trickling in.
Okay.
So,
yeah. I set so many lines that are exactly on the number that right now I'm not going to be heavily involved. And the situations, you've heard me talk about power ratings, technical analysis, and situational analysis. Situational analysis has very few nuggets this week, almost zero. So It's just going to be okay. It's probably a good thing because I'm going to be heavily involved on Saturday.
Looking forward to this Browns-Ravens game.
Yeah, now this is one of the more exciting games on the calendar.
Yeah, is that the top game of the week?
San Francisco, Jacksonville would give it the run for
Oh
the
yeah,
money.
yes, yep. There's a and the Houston Cincy game is interesting. The Lions Chargers game is interesting. So you've got four really good matchups.
Yeah, the last two you mentioned would be in tier 2, and then there's a drop. And the first two would be in tier 1. And Cleveland Baltimore is a compelling matchup, and it could have serious ramifications in the divisional standings.
Yeah, we can't afford any Baltimore losses. That's for sure. We talked on the Houston Cincy game already.
I want to make one more point on the Baltimore. I think it's good that Baltimore has this matchup this week and not earlier, because I know they had one already, but the chance for Todd Monken and the way Lamar Jackson is taking to the offense gives them a chance against Cleveland to score some points in this particular game. And they're going to need the offense to compete in this game, just because I still don't know about Baltimore's decision making at end of half and end of half game scenarios.
Yeah, let's go to that San Francisco Jacksonville game. San Francisco's off the bye, so that stopped their dismal 3-game winning streak or losing streak. And Jacksonville was playing much better. They're on a 5-game winning streak. So very interesting placement of the buys with these two teams, because it's very disruptive of the flow, and oftentimes, more so than not, changes the direction with teams. What are your thoughts in this particular situation?
Jacksonville benefited from the bye because there was fatigue off London, and then they had to play a Thursday game and so on. But San Francisco benefited even more from their bye week. Trent Williams trending to play. Deebo Samuel definitely playing. Purdy actually cleared, really cleared from the concussion. And more important than all of that, they trade for Chase Young on the defensive line, and they don't rush him into action because it's a bye week. They get to actually incorporate him into the system. When you trade for somebody and you have a week off to acclimate them, it's an enormous advantage to the team. Power rating wise, I don't think San Francisco should be 3 points on the road, but this is one of two situations that I think benefits San Francisco.
Yeah, it's an awfully interesting matchup. I'm curious to see what happens to this line and whether which side is going to draw first blood, so to speak. It's got to move some direction.
I wonder, and I'm curious what you think, is the minute it goes off 3, somebody goes and brings it back to 3.
Probably either direction. The people that got in early with San Francisco are probably in good shape there. I don't think this can go over 3. Come to think of it, I think it can only go down.
Not according to my power ratings, it should only go down.
Yeah,
I like the question that's up on the screen right now about bottom feeders tanking. There are 2 parts to that equation, and I don't think players ever tank. We've had that discussion. Players are making too much money to tank. They can't do that. They don't want their jobs taken over. On the other hand, coaches can be encouraged to do a form of tanking by resting starters, like Derek Carr last year. Remember, they wanted to keep him in bubble wrap so he wouldn't get injured, so they wouldn't pay him 20-something million. We might see the same thing with Jimmy G this year, keeping him in bubble wrap so they don't owe him any kind of money. The Giants we talked about, not tanking per se, but looking forward to next season. Caleb Williams, I don't think any team should ever tank for a quarterback. We talked about Miami Dolphins tanking for Tua about 4 years ago. They ended up getting him with the 5th overall pick in the draft, as it turns out. We don't know if Caleb Williams is that much better than some of the other Pac-12 quarterbacks or May of North Carolina and so on. I really don't think you necessarily tank for a person, and no player tanks but there are subtle ways to determine whether the team that you're thinking of, a bottom feeder, is thinking about next year and not this year. And that's in who they're starting on the roster.
If my team was in a position to get that number one pick, I would probably be beside myself simply because I want nothing to do with that Caleb guy. And I'm always wrong about quarterbacks. So, my opinion is absolutely worthless, but I've got to be right sometime. I think this guy's going to be in trouble. I mean, I want ownership. I only want to go to five teams. He's, bawling his eyes out on the sidelines. He's completely, falling apart in games. Just a lot of signs that I don't like, character issues, just weakness. Like I said, I'm always wrong about quarterbacks, but that's my look today. Is I wouldn't want anything to do with the guy anymore.
The sad thing about analyzing Caleb Williams is he probably won't play in a bowl game because a lot of high draft choices, if they're not playing for titles, are going to opt out of bowl games. And so I fully expect Caleb Williams, if he's going to go into the draft, to opt out of a bowl game. And that's when you really get a chance to see what somebody is capable of doing when they go against a non-Pac-12 defense. Pac-12 doesn't play a lot of defense. So I'd rather see him go up even against a defensive-minded team like an Auburn or some other team like that. I think there was a Memphis quarterback, was it Paxton Lynch? Memphis had everything to play for. They played against an Auburn team that was disinterested, and Paxton Lynch in the bowl game put up under 100 yards. And we found out, hey, wait a second. He's not a first-round quarterback, even though he was drafted in the first round. We're not going to know that about Caleb Williams, so we're going to have to study other factors.
I'm glad I don't have to make that decision. So I'm sure the Bears will make the right move like they always do.
Oh, yeah.
Saints and Vikings, the coach of the year discussion for Minnesota. And I got to admit that's quite the possibility. And I'm not even sure they need to win the division for him to be able to get that coach of the year. But if they make the playoffs, he's certainly in the discussion. What are your thoughts?
I would put Houston's coach above him right now. How they're 4-4 is a miracle in my mind. Now, typically, it's going to go to somebody who, let's say Baltimore gets the number one overall seed. Harbaugh's going to get, whether we believe it or not, Harbaugh's going to get coach of the year recognition for that achievement. And there's probably a couple of other teams that if they come up with 12, 13 game winning seasons will be ahead of the Baltimores and the Minneapolis and Minnesotas of the world. But it doesn't mean they're not doing a great job.
I think it's Brian Burwell. I may be wrong, but somebody of his stature came out with his midway awards. And he has Tomlin as coach of the year at this point. Kind of surprising.
Huh. Well, if they make the playoffs, it's another tremendous achievement for them. But, we'll see.
He's never had finished in the top 5 in voting. So it's he could become the well, we got to give it to him sort of guy.
Yeah. Well, his career will end with Hall of Fame recognition, but he's not ready to call it quits yet.
I placed a very small wager on McCarthy only because it was 50-1. They had a good team, and I figured, hey, if they go 15-2, he may get it. But I knew it was a long shot, and that's obviously toilet paper.
I do not place those kinds of bets where it's not I like binary, the bets that are yes, no. Will they make the playoffs? Will they not? You've heard Cris and I add a bunch of plays during the season, such as the Lions to win the division, Jacksonville to win the division, the Jets over. I mean, there's a number of plays that we've made, but they're either yes, no kind of plays. That's more in my wheelhouse.
Yeah, I'm not feeling as good about my Jets over, but they only need 3 more games.
Yeah, I don't feel as good either.
They can still get it. They can still get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Saints Vikings game is going to be interesting, I think.
Yeah, I'm assuming Dobbs is starting this week. That's how I set my line based on that.
He is. And then that guy that played last week, he's out. So I don't know who they have as a backup.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure on that one either right now. And Dobbs, we saw what he could do with his legs. And that's what I said going in. We had that discussion on Friday when we talked about quarterbacks and so on, that Dobbs brings an element, he doesn't bring the Cousins element where he has that tremendous completion percentage and throws down the field. We know Dobbs is going to have some weapons, and Addison and Jefferson's coming back in a week or two. So the big question here is, because he has dual ability and because he's a fairly smart quarterback, as evidenced by what he did and somehow willed the team to win, is that enough to put Minnesota into playoff contention? And I argued 2 weeks ago it was yes, even before Dobbs was signed.
Well, what do you think the Vikings are to win the division?
That I don't know, but I would be shocked if Detroit didn't win the division.
The Vikings have a reasonable pathway. They have not played the Lions.
Is that two of the last 3 weeks? I think
they played 2 out of the last 3 weeks of the season.
So sort of remembered that.
So the Vikings control their own destiny when you really think about it. If you catch the if the Chargers catch the Lions this week, Minnesota takes care of business. Only 1 game separates them.
Plus, it's weird. They won the division last year, but most of their tough games are gone already.
Oh, the Lions have the easiest remaining schedule in the league.
But, I mean, look at Minnesota's schedule. It's not that tough going in. The toughest game they have left is at Cincinnati.
So
they've already played Philadelphia. That means they've already played San Francisco. So that's why I think they're really strong as far as making the playoffs.
Well, what do you put the odds at the Vikings making the playoffs? Washington and the Giants are out.
Okay.
Packers and Bears are out. Carolina's out. And Tampa's probably out.
Minnesota, I would say, off the top of my head, 70% chance of making the playoffs, maybe more.
70?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, how much do you want at plus 125?
Okay, phase 2. Live betting continues.
I'm betting this. This is
live, folks.
Yeah. Plus 125. I can't believe it. And I just bet that without even looking elsewhere. So I probably did a shitty line, but I don't care.
Very interesting, huh? Odds to make the playoffs. All right, that's why we talk.
Yep. Let's see what this place has. Oh.
Now, we know that it's not a guarantee that they're going to win this game against the Saints. They're not even favored against the Saints. The question I would have is it worth it to wait a week? Play part of it now and part of it later?
No, because the Lions could lose to the Chargers, and if the Vikings win, that's going to make a huge difference. And Tampon Bay might lose, and that basically leaves them for dead. They're in the driver's seat. I mean, they really are. Dallas is in, Seattle's in, and one of the NFC South is in. There's four additional spots, right?
There's 3 additional spots to winning the division.
Okay.
But you said one of the NFC South, but that's the winner of the division. Second place in the division.
Well,
yeah. Whoever finishes second, you could worry about Atlanta, but I worry about Atlanta in different ways. I think Atlanta is poorly coached.
And the Vikings are 4-2 in the conference, while the Saints have a losing record and Atlanta is 3-2 on the tiebreakers.
Yeah. I think the Saints will win the division, but I wouldn't put money on it because I don't trust them.
Yeah, there's something odd with them. All right, well, Hector bet the Vikings to win the championship at 120-1. That's a little optimistic.
Yeah, that's optimistic. They will have to play 3 road games to get there.
Boy, this is a real. When you have lemons, you make lemonade. Packers, Steelers.
Well, it's a good defensive battle. I want to know if Micah Fitzpatrick is back, because he would bait somebody like Jordan Love. I don't think Green Bay gets away with playing ultra conservative like they did against the Rams in this particular game. Which quarterback is going to make the most mistakes in the Green Bay-Pittsburgh game?
I don't see anything. Well, I haven't been watching Love. I mean, how poorly is he playing?
He makes bad judgment is the problem. He's got a wonderful arm and he can hit wide open receivers. And he's one of the better deep ball throwers. And to Green Bay's credit, they called a lot of deep plays during the year. Now, their top receiver for deep balls, Christian Watson, he was banged up in the last game. I'm not sure he even goes this coming Sunday. And Pittsburgh's going to be fundamentally sound as long as Fitzpatrick is back in the deep defense. But I've seen Love throw into coverage way too many times for a guy who sat and learned under Aaron Rodgers for 3 years.
But the Steelers can be beat deep. Their deep ball coverage isn't very good, is it?
Well, I'm looking at the matchup analysis for the teams, and the only thing I see is that Green Bay is more likely to turn the ball over than Pittsburgh in this game. There's very little separating my technical analysis in this game. And because of that, I'm not willing to lay 3 points.
This is the type of game, Pittsburgh is, they do the voodoo against the good teams, and then this is the type of game that they muck up.
Yeah, they have had an extra few days of rest, for whatever that's worth.
Well,
good game, reasonably interesting game.
Tennessee Tampa Bay isn't very interesting.
No, Tampa is. We talk about defense. I think Tampa's defense is lower than is worse than people think.
Let's check in on that. Oh, holy cow. They are sinking like a rock defensively. The worst team defensively over the last 5 weeks.
Yeah.
New England is second worst.
That's what I thought, Chris. And, they go up against Will Levis, who they should be scheming against to do wonderful things, but instead they have a sour taste in their mouth because of the way what they did defensively to allow Houston to score and win that game is not defensible. Speaking of defense.
I have these teams 29th and 28th in defense. So this should be a high scoring shootout, right?
Tennessee would prefer not, but I also would have set Tennessee as a 1-point favorite, not a 1-point dog in this game.
Well, this is kind of hilarious. They're side by side offensively also. I have them 20th and 21st offensively.
Yeah. It's just weird going through my numbers as we speak and not finding matchup edges in some of these games. And this is another one. I worry about Will Levis interceptions in this game if Tampa's focused, but you got to tell me, is Tampa focused?
I don't know. This is one of 3 games that lands exactly on within a half of 0 this week on my numbers.
Yeah. Don't want to force a play if it's not there.
Atlanta, Arizona, we've got Murray back. They're dangling the Connor carrot. I hate to hear everybody say the same thing I was thinking, but we don't expect Murray to be able to just step in game 1 and be anywhere near his normal self. And frankly, his normal self that we think he is, we haven't seen in, more than, a season and a half. It's been 3 seasons ago since he actually performed at a high level. Even if he was 100% healthy, he'd already lost his speed and his running ability, which, narrows the game plan a little bit. So what are your expectations with and without Connor coming back with Murray this week?
High variance. That's what we're dealing with Murray. That's number 1. And number 2, if you have to come back for a game, why not come back against Atlanta, who plays incredibly passive defense? 70% allowed through the air, slightly below average or around average against the ground, in ground game. A lot of sacks for Atlanta this year. Well, by their standards, a lot of sacks. But remember, a lot of those sacks were compiled against Sam Howell and a couple of other quarterbacks. Of course, Murray may fit in that as well. My feeling here is that I'd probably lean Arizona's way because of the opponent they're facing this week.
Well,
oh, I see we got the Lions almost a field goal now against the Chargers on the quote-unquote road.
Yeah, I fully expected it to touch 3. I think it probably would rest at a strong 2.5 or a week 3. I don't, 3's too much on this game, but 2.5 makes sense.
Yeah, I think this will be a good test for Detroit's pass defense. We'll see if they can handle it in this particular case.
I was surprised with the pressure they were able to get on. I mean, I know the Jets were missing, had backup offensive line help, but are the Chargers really known for being able to get that much pressure on? Was that a combination of a weak offensive line with replacements and Bosa being back, or how have the Chargers been on the pressure overall?
Well, I think you're zoned in this week. I think you're ready for a big week because that's the big question. The Chargers have quietly overachieved in rushing the passer even before last week's game where they had 8 sacks on the New York Jets. So this is a different Charger team, which is really strange to see. There are a lot of parts coming together for this Charger team. Now, we know they don't really have home field advantage, and that's a flaw for their organization in terms of where they are. They're better off staying in San Diego and gaining some of that. So we're not going to see true home field advantage. The Chargers are playing as if they can secure that 7th seed in the AFC, in my opinion. It's going to be tight. They're going to have to do a lot of things right. But if you think that Cincinnati and Baltimore are getting in, and Miami and Buffalo are getting in, although Buffalo's on thin ice right now, there's still room for the Chargers to get in and make the playoffs. But this is a tough game for them, obviously. Detroit off rest. I'm not sure whether or not Detroit needed the rest or didn't need the rest. They're getting a couple of healthy bodies back. Is that right, Chris?
Yeah, Montgomery's going to be back.
Huge in the red zone.
It's really bizarre. I usually hear or see the injury updates all week long from the Detroit beat writers, and there just must be no issues at all at this point. I think the break came at a good time. They get to work with Jameson more. They get Montgomery back. Just seems like a huge advantage against the Chargers off a short week. They're plus 155 to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I would like the Jets better because I do not trust the Chargers as much.
Well, I get no respect at Circa. They didn't move that Viking, so it's still plus 125.
I'll write a letter to Jeff Benson and tell him that.
The Jets are plus 260 to make the playoffs.
The Jets are plus 260. Well, they deserve to be. Oh, did I say the Jets? I'm sorry. I meant, what did I mean? I meant the Vikings. I have more trust in the Vikings than the Chargers.
Yeah, that's how it's lined. Texans?
I don't know.
235.
I don't know how much you want to spend on the New York Giants, Dallas.
What did your line come out to?
I set it at 15. And I was arbitrarily making a number for their quarterback, for their locker room mentality, for Dallas in a divisional game lined up against a team that they routinely beat. I could have set it anywhere.
I have this number in the 20s.
Yeah, see? I mean, I could artificially have set it anywhere. I think the correct line, if I had to lower them 5 points on my power number, would have been 16, which is about what I last saw. But, Giants are in.
Like I said, I think the Giants 16?
Yeah, 16 underdog.
Oh, I thought you had them rated 16th in the league. I'm like, what?
I have them rated 32nd in the league.
I have them 32nd also.
I would make it lower, but there are only 32 teams.
You know what? This one's a mighty interesting game for some reason. Washington and Seattle. I can't really argue why. It just interests me, though.
It's an interesting game. Seattle is a little bit untrustworthy at these spreads, which bothers me. Washington is typically, for better or for worse, this is a situation I'm going to lay out there that's not something you want to back by itself, but I'm going to say it anyway. Washington is one of the worst teams in the NFL when they have to play consecutive road games. Here they're playing a consecutive road game from East Coast to West Coast. So it's a definite change for them. This is a stay away game because this is a Washington team in that situation. It's not one that makes me bet Seattle, but it's one that might take me off of Washington.
Yeah, I have no horse in this race, other than the money I accidentally bet on Seattle and have to buy back. So,
Remember, I mean, Washington got a win. They lost their two best defensive linemen, but they got a win against a New England team that has some of the slowest running backs in the NFL. Seattle doesn't have that situation. They have two running backs that could take advantage of Washington's defensive line. Now, we know that Geno Smith is a lot different quarterback than he was the first 6 or 7 games of 2022. He has become league more than average and worse than average in terms of turnover worthy plays. That's a problem for me with Geno Smith. He's hit his ceiling and he's bouncing back. He gets a semi-favorable matchup in this game, but I just don't trust Geno Smith in this situation.
I believe he had 1 interception through 4 games and 8 interceptions or turnovers the next 4 games.
Yeah, and Pete Carroll had addressed that in the media this week. I definitely encourage people to get sound bites from all teams. And Pete Carroll says, yeah, he'd like to rein him in a little bit here. He's concerned about his turnovers.
Yeah, well, he was careful not to spread the blame away from Geno, which was good. I just noticed 86% are on the Lions so far at DraftKings, 84% on the Steelers, 82% on the Cowboys, 73% on the Bengals, doesn't surprise me. 72% on the Falcons surprises me a little bit. And 72% on the Bills surprises me a little bit.
Sunday night.
Our next prime time.
Yeah, can't wait.
My gosh.
Okay, I have a question for you, but it's not my question. It's Mike's question from the very beginning of the show, but I picked a time to put it in here. He asked a question about, do we handicap differently when we look at spreads versus money lines? And I bring that up now because if we think the Jets have a legit chance of winning this game, is it better to take the odds or is it better to go on the money line?
I've gone through. It was a project I did about a year ago. I tested what would have happened if I had played all the underdogs that I had played on the money line, and I wasn't missing anything. I wouldn't. It was a washout. So the short. Well, I'm definitely trying to. I'm adding more money line when it's 3 or when it's definitely when it's under 3. I'm money line, and even on some 3s, the 1 and the 2 are just too important now. There's just too much goofy stuff happening.
It used to be easier, but one of the techniques I used to use when I had a 2.5 was to go 2/3 buying the play up to +3 and 1/3 on the money line. Now you could get burned if the game ends 1 or 2, but you're still going to make money because 2/3 of your money would be on the +3. You lose if the game ends exactly on 3, then you lose just the 1/3 of the play. But that's kind of my rationale. But now 1 and 2 have become a little bit more important. So my other rationale would be this game or the Jacksonville game against San Francisco, if you like the Jags, for example, is it's still return on investment. How many times am I going to win the game or push the game out of 100 if Jacksonville is +3 against San Francisco? And then if I think it's 60 out of 100 or something, then there's a return on investment. How many times will Jacksonville win the game straight up against San Francisco? If I think it's 45 times that they're going to win the game straight up and I get a money line that gives me return on advantage on 45 times, then that's what I do. I just apply return on investment with whatever odds I'm dealing with.
I've had poor luck. I do like to, if I have 5 underdogs that are short, I do like to do 5 team round robins on the money line for peanuts. And I've been unable to get 3 out of 5 the weeks that I've done that this season, which is probably 3 or 4 times 3 or 4 weeks this season I've done it, and I have not been able to get 3 out of 5. It just disappointing.
I understand that mentality a lot. There are 2 or 3 weeks during the season where I look and say, this is an underdog week. I'm on 6, 7, 8 underdogs. On those weeks, I will sprinkle some money line in there too because of my convictions.
I don't want to talk about the Jets Raiders. The Jets just make me ill.
Okay, we can skip that one. We have another day on Friday if we need to.
Yeah.
Denver Buffalo, Monday Night Football. Will we see a different Denver team off the bye? Because statistically wise, that defense is horrible.
It's funny because I want to look at a couple things on Denver here. Yeah. Huh? Well, Denver's right around 20th over the last 5 weeks. Buffalo is about 26th. And Denver's about 10th from the bottom on defense and middle of the road on offense.
How much do you trust Russell Wilson?
He seems to be faring better, even don't you think? I mean, he's getting better than he was. What do you think? I wasn't trusting him much at all, but I'm starting to think that he's kind of pulling it together.
To me, the most interesting fact about Denver is what they didn't do at the trade deadline. Because they won that game against Kansas City, they changed, in my opinion, from sellers to being neutral. They kept Cortland Sutton. They kept Jerry Jeudy. I think Sean Payton still thinks, I'm guessing now, but I think he still thinks the 7th playoff seed is up for grabs and that he can make something out of this team. If you're going to finish 12th overall in the league or 16th or 18th or 20th, he's not going to get a top 5 draft choice out of all of this. So, why not think that you can make this team better? So I'm cautiously optimistic we'll see a different Denver off the bye.
Well, you can get plus 1475 to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know I haven't calculated what I would see. I'd have to look at their schedule much more closely. I'm not saying they will make the playoffs. I'm saying that he thinks they have a chance to make the playoffs.
I have, let's see, there's 3. I mean, I had completely written off my Broncos alternative wins over 6.5. I've got to think there's still remote hope I can get that.
They have a 3-game road stand in December, which is not going to be, that's not perfect, an ideal situation. They have some winnable games. At home, they play Minnesota, Cleveland, New England, and the Chargers.
They can get 2 of those.
The floor should be 2-2 on those games.
What about their road games?
Road games are at Buffalo this week, which is a tough one on Monday night.
Yeah.
But again, they're rested. At Houston, not out of the realm of possibility. At the Chargers, which is a neutral site kind of game. At the Lions, which looks a little tough back. That's their 3rd of 3 back road games. I see them as not having a good situational spot for the Lion game. And the closing game is at Vegas, and you don't know what's going to happen with those teams at that point. Neither one has ever been a good closing team, and they get to play each other. How many wins? They have 3, and you need to get to over 7.5.
Well, I need 4 wins to get over the alt.
Okay.
Alt.
I would say they will get to 7. I think they have a very realistic chance to be 7-10. You heard it here first.
I'm gonna check. I might have gone over 5.5 too.
Well, yeah, you must have laid some juice with that one, but that is very realistic, obviously.
Yeah, well, I certainly did. I don't see it here.
Want to touch quickly before we're done on the 4 teams that are on buys this week. Miami and Kansas City, who just played in Germany. I think a real nice buy for Miami because they're going to get really healthy after the buy. And Kansas City could use the buy too because they're going to have a brutal final 6 games. So the more rest they can get. The Rams have an incredibly important buy for Matthew Stafford's sake, for whatever their run game sake is, and for incorporating Carson Wentz into the operation. Philly's buy I'm not so excited about, except for the Jalen Hurts situation. You've said all along that you think Jalen Hurts is not playing at full capacity, and it kind of showed against Dallas. So from that standpoint, it's a good rest for Jalen Hurts. Not sure it's a great rest for the rest of the team, but if Hurts comes back re-energized, that's not bad.
Super Bowl KC -2.5 rematch
against Philly. Boy, that's a play most likely to be voided because it's hard to have these rematches, but
yeah, I don't see a rematch coming.
Yeah. That's a tough one.
You got any college? College has been really good. We've had another winning week, thankfully. So,
yeah, college has been unsustainably great for me. Last week was going to be good, but I lost a couple of night games, so it was a winning week, but it wasn't a real exciting week for me last week, so it was kind of down in a way. I'm not prepared to give you numbers, lines, stuff like that for the college right now, but I can tell you this will be a heavy card.
A heavy card?
Yep.
Oh, Jesus.
Well, there's already been 11 plays made, so it makes it for a when you only had 7 or 8 last week, and now you have 11, and it's Tuesday. That makes it a heavy card.
You got anything tonight?
I have not handicapped the MAC closely enough to tell you. I will tell you before kickoff offline. Chances are good that I won't have any action in the MAC tonight. Anything you could share on the MAC?
I'm fighting some group. I like Western Michigan in the spot tonight.
Okay, I do have power numbers for our college friends. You like Western Michigan in the spot. Western Michigan, wow, what's the line?
3.
Okay, so Western Michigan is undervalued. I have them as a 6-point favorite.
That's what I have.
I like Central Michigan in general as a road dog. Both the coach and the team tend to thrive in that situation. 3 is interesting because I could see them losing by 3.
Yeah, I'm just too lazy to put them in a front-loaded parlay or.
The other 2 games tonight are right on my numbers.
Actually, I like. I can't bring myself to bet this team though.
Ball State.
Yeah, I mean, how the hell is Northern Illinois even won 4 games? They're not that good.
Offhand, without doing any work on this, Northern Illinois has a slightly better roster than Ball State. Both of these teams have coaches that could be fired. I'm praying that Ball State's coach doesn't get fired because I like going against him a lot. He's on my bottom 5 coaches list. Northern Illinois, there wasn't enough room to put Northern Illinois' coach on the bottom 5, but he's in my bottom 15. So you got to expect some sort of bad coaching decision to cost whatever team anybody's playing to lose tonight.
I just think the line, I can get 9.5. I think that's way too much for a team like Northern Illinois to be laying.
Weren't they 10 at one point?
Probably. I missed the boat on it.
Yeah. I recorded 10 as their number.
Yeah, I think they were 10. I might get involved in Ball State regardless.
I will root for you then, because a Ball State win, maybe he can keep his job. Okay, so Friday we're back with the Inside Blitz. We'll come up with a topic of choice. I'm kind of thinking that it's a good time to talk about coaches. First coach to be fired, maybe. That might be an interesting discussion. We've already had one, right?
We already had one.
Yeah. Next coach to be fired then. How many coaches will be fired at the end of the year?
Well, didn't it seem like last year that we saw an uptick on firings? I mean, I know that they technically can't do anything, but it just seemed like teams wanted to put themselves out there as early as possible for potential great candidates, if that makes any sense. Did you, or am I just imagining that?
No, a few coaches were fired before the end of the season. And in college, we had an unprecedented number of coaches fired before the end of the season, which is not taking place this year, interestingly enough. It was crazy. By the time we got to this point in November, we had 5 or 6 college coaches on the unemployment line. So I think it's better to wait. You're not solving anything by doing it now, regardless. But we'll see. We'll still see the 5 to 7 new NFL coaches for next year.
The Bears line is already moved. I think that it's all baked in there that Fields is playing. It's a half a point difference at the most. He was referencing the Kansas City next Monday night matchup of the following week.
Let's see Kansas City is playing who next week?
Philadelphia at Kansas City.
Oh my goodness! Oh, that's the Super Bowl.
The look ahead's 2.5.
Philadelphia at Kansas City. With a healthy Hurts, I would probably lean Philadelphia with no work at all, but I would have to look at the matchup metrics, and I do not do matchup metrics on bye teams.
It's right on my number as they sit right now.
Okay.
I have a 2 point.
Philly, Kansas City. Is it a Sunday game? Regular
Monday.
Sunday?
It's a
Monday night. Okay. I would have Kansas City favored by 1.5 right now.
Did I misread my thing here?
So, that's not much of a difference. Philly +3 would be in consideration.
I have Philly better than Kansas City.
Yeah. So we would both lean on our power numbers to Philly. Probably I would prefer it not being a standalone game on a Monday night with the Kansas City. I bump up home field a half a point for Monday night games. Obviously didn't help the Jets last week, but that's just a general, you're not going to be right every week.
Okay. Well, I guess we touched on all the questions and we've gone very long, and I have a conference call in 6 minutes. So
Yeah, Get out of here, Chris, and we'll talk Friday.
Good chat. We'll talk Friday. We appreciate everybody joining. I hope everybody picked up a few tidbits. We appreciate the contributions and questions. It helps us out also. And we'll be back. I have the Bet US show tomorrow at noon. And then Ron and Ted and I will be back on Friday at noon. And Ron has a show right after that, right?
Show right after that with NCAA football talk. For everybody who likes the NCAA, we get back into it.
Okay. I will see you later, guys.